MTV is petrified because they got a couple calls yesterday and people were saying, what if Nicki says this and if Nicki says that? And it's okay, MTV, I can control myself. Because if you can't control yourself, you can't control anything around you, right? But you know who can't control themselves? Roman. Red Ruby the Seas. Charlie. So I'll think about it.
Speaking of disrespect, have you seen Nicki Minaj losing her fucking mind?
She's beefed with every female artist.
Now, I ain't gonna lie, her beef with Jay-Z is personal because there's money involved.
Yeah.
So
that's different.
And we haven't heard too many people talk out about it, but apparently, like, what Nicki is alleging is that Jay-Z owes her tens of millions of dollars simply because when she had that exclusive deal with Tidal. I don't know if you remember that when Jay-Z was coming out. It was like 2015 or some shit. Jay-Z was coming out with Madonna and Draft Punk and all the biggest artists, Beyonce, Kanye. Everybody was elbow to elbow, walking out, talking about we're fighting these streaming services. We're going to create our own platform. We're going to pay our artists more. Tidal flopped, respectfully. He sold Tidal, but he probably, allegedly, all those artists were promised a stake in the company. I'm not too sure what the stake was. I think it was like a 3%.
But that's a lot.
That's a lot,
yeah.
Right? That's a lot, especially when you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, you know what I'm saying? 3% of $1 billion is what? I don't like 30 million or some shit like that. About 3%, I'm crashing out too.
Yeah.
You feel me? Like, I ain't mad at her crashing out on hold. That's what their situation.
The 2026 Grammys were supposed to be another polished night of gold statues, designer outfits, and safe little speeches. Nobody expected chaos. Nobody expected war. And nobody expected the most powerful moment of the night to come from someone who wasn't even in the building. February 2nd, 2026. The Crypto.com arena in Los Angeles was packed wall to wall. Every major name in music showed up. Trevor Noah stepped on stage for what he announced would be his 6th and final time hosting the Grammys. The crowd was hyped, cameras flashed, the vibe felt smooth. Then one joke changed everything. Trevor made a comment about Nicki Minaj visiting Washington just days earlier. He referenced her smiling next to Donald Trump and calling herself his #1 fan. The crowd laughed, but it wasn't that comfortable kind of laugh. It was tight, awkward, like people didn't know how far this was about to go. The camera cut to the audience. That's when things got weird. Chrissy Teigen was caught on camera throwing up a big thumbs up when it was pointed out Nicki wasn't there. Sitting beside her, John Legend smiled calmly while parts of the audience cheered over the absence of one of the biggest female rappers in history. Within minutes, the clip hit social media. And that's when the explosion happened. Nicki wasn't on the red carpet. She wasn't backstage. She wasn't even in the same state. But from thousands of miles away, she grabbed her phone and took over the entire night. What started as a joke turned into a digital firestorm. Tweets started flying, screenshots spread like wildfire, accusations surfaced, names were dropped, and by the time the final Grammy was handed out, nobody was talking about who won. They were talking about Nicki, because what she said next didn't just shake the Grammys, it shook the entire music industry. It didn't take long. While trophies were being handed out inside the Crypto.com arena, Nicki Minaj was doing something far more powerful. She was rewriting the narrative in real time. Mid-show, her X account lit up. One post, then another, then another. By the time the ceremony hit its second hour, she had fired off dozens of messages. Not mild reactions, not playful shade, full force. She called the Grammys a ritual. She warned that God will reveal everything. She wrote that every tongue rising against her would be condemned. The tone wasn't sarcastic. It was intense, personal, almost prophetic, and the timing was surgical. Every time a winner walked on stage, viewers weren't searching their name. They were refreshing Nicki's feed. Google Trends spiked. Within hours, she became the most searched artist in the world that night, despite not even being nominated in a major televised category. That's power. Clips of the crowd laughing earlier, circulating everywhere. The thumbs up moment? Viral. Think pieces started rolling in before the show even ended. Some outlets called it a breakdown, others called it a political rant, but none of them could ignore it. The Grammys were still happening, but the spotlight had shifted. Nicki escalated fast. She began reposting old images, controversial ones. Photos of Jay-Z with a teenage Aaliyah resurfaced. Early pictures of him with a young Beyonce appeared next. She didn't explain much. She didn't need to. The implication was enough to send the internet into chaos. Suddenly, this wasn't about a joke. It wasn't about politics. It wasn't even about the Grammys anymore. It was about power. And Nicki made one thing very clear. She believed powerful people had been moving behind the scenes for years. But here's the part most people missed. This didn't feel impulsive. It felt prepared. And if this was just the opening act, what was she really building toward? The posts kept coming. And one name kept appearing over and over again, Jay-Z. Nicki wasn't vague. She wasn't hinting. She was direct. She accused him of owing her somewhere between $100 and $200 million. Not thousands, not a few unpaid royalties, hundreds of millions. That number alone made people stop scrolling. Then she went even further. She claimed he had ruined parts of hip-hop, football, basketball, touring, and even social media platforms. That's a massive accusation. We're talking about a billionaire mogul whose company, Roc Nation, manages artists, athletes, and major brand partnerships across multiple industries. Jay-Z isn't just a rapper, he's a business empire. So when Nicki started suggesting that one man had that much reach and influence, the internet split instantly. Some fans believed she was finally exposing a system that had protected powerful figures for years. Others said it sounded exaggerated, even conspiratorial. But here's the part that made things more interesting. Roc Nation didn't respond. No statement, no lawsuit, no public denial, and that silence became its own headline. People started asking a simple question. If someone publicly claimed you owed them $200 million, wouldn't you take them to court immediately? Especially if you had the resources. Nicki leaned into that silence. She told her followers that certain people in high places had been doing horrific things to maintain power. She warned that the industry machine was bigger than most fans realized. She even hinted that this wasn't just about money, it was about control. And the more she posted, the clearer it became. This wasn't just Grammy night anger, this was personal. But if she believed she was owed hundreds of millions, where did that number even come from? To understand that, we have to go back to 2015, to a streaming platform that was supposed to change everything. Back in 2015, the music industry was changing fast. Streaming was taking over. Artists were complaining about low payouts. And that's when Jay-Z stepped in with a bold promise. The platform was called Tidal. It launched with huge hype. The message was simple. This would be an artist-owned streaming service, a place where musicians would finally get paid fairly. At the launch event, some of the biggest names in the world stood on stage together, including Beyonce, Kanye West, and Nicki Minaj. Nicki wasn't just a supporter. She was reportedly one of the equity partners. Multiple reports at the time suggested she received around a 3% ownership stake in exchange for exclusive content and promotion, and she promoted it heavily. Interviews, social posts, public appearances, her fan base backed it too. The idea sounded powerful, artists controlling their own platform instead of tech companies. Fast forward to 2021. Jay-Z sold Tidal to Square, the financial company led by Jack Dorsey, in a deal reportedly valued at around $297 million. On paper, that sale looked massive. If Nicki truly held equity, logic says she should have walked away with a significant payout. But according to her, that never happened. She later claimed she got a phone call saying there was no real profit to distribute. Nothing meaningful? Zero. That's when suspicion kicked in. How does a platform sell for nearly $300 million and original partners allegedly walk away empty-handed? Nicki claimed she was later offered around $1 million to stay quiet. She refused. And that's where the $100 to $200 million number started making sense in her narrative. If she believed her stake was undervalued or manipulated, the difference could be huge. But here's the twist. Tidal wasn't just a business deal. For Nicki, it was loyalty. She showed up when the platform needed credibility. She pushed it when critics doubted it. So if she felt cut out of the final reward, it wouldn't just be about money, it would feel like betrayal. And if that betrayal sat quietly for years, Grammy night might have just been the moment it finally exploded. But money wasn't the only thing fueling her anger. The next controversy dragged the NFL into the conversation. The Grammys weren't the only stage where Nicki felt something was off. A year before the Grammy chaos, the internet had already been arguing about another massive decision: the 2025 Super Bowl halftime show. When the NFL announced that Kendrick Lamar would headline the performance in New Orleans, the reaction was immediate. Kendrick is respected, critically acclaimed, one of the biggest rappers alive. But New Orleans is home to Lil Wayne. Fans thought Wayne was the obvious choice. Social media filled with posts saying the hometown legend had earned that stage. Instead, the slot went to Kendrick. And since Rock Nation partners with the NFL to help produce the halftime show, fingers pointed straight toward Jay-Z. That's when Nicki stepped in. She didn't frame it as business. She framed it as loyalty and ego. She suggested Wayne had been denied something he rightfully earned. She hinted that old tensions between Jay-Z, Drake, Birdman, and herself may have influenced decisions behind the scenes. To her, it wasn't just about a performance slot. It was about power moves. And when you look at the history, there's context. Lil Wayne once publicly supported Nicki during label disputes. Drake has had competitive tension with Jay-Z over the years. The hip-hop industry isn't just music. It's alliances, deals, quiet rivalries. Nicki's critics argued that Kendrick was simply chosen because of cultural relevance and recent accolades. He had headlined festivals worldwide. He had Pulitzer recognition. From a business perspective, it made sense. But Nicki wasn't buying that explanation. She even referenced lyrics suggesting that certain people in the NFL were fired and then rehired, hinting that influence runs deeper than fans see. The Super Bowl debate didn't fade quietly. It simmered, so when Grammy night hit and Nicki felt mocked publicly, all those past frustrations resurfaced at once. This wasn't one isolated incident. In her mind, it was a pattern. And the next move she made proved she was ready to take things somewhere much darker. Then the conversation shifted. It wasn't about money anymore. It wasn't about the Super Bowl. It was about history. During her Grammy night posting spree, Nicki Minaj resurfaced old images that had been circulating online for years. One photo allegedly showed Jay-Z standing next to a teenage Aaliyah in the mid-1990s. The internet instantly froze. The claim attached to the photo suggested Aaliyah was around 15 or 16 at the time, while Jay-Z was in his mid to late 20s. That detail mattered. It changed how people viewed the image. But timelines quickly became part of the debate. Public records show Aaliyah turned 17 in January 1996. Some fans argued the photo may have been taken after her 17th birthday. Others pointed out that even a 26-year-old around a 17-year-old still raises eyebrows. The full context of that photo has never been fully confirmed. Then another name resurfaced, Dame Dash. Dame has said in past interviews that he, not Jay-Z, was romantically involved with Aaliyah during that period. He claimed Jay showed interest but never dated her. Whether that clears anything up depends on who you believe. But Nicki didn't stop there. She also brought up early images of Jay-Z with a young Beyonce. Beyonce has publicly stated that she met Jay-Z when she was 18 and began dating him at 19. However, some reports over the years suggested they may have crossed paths earlier when she was younger. Those timelines have been debated online for decades. Nicki wasn't presenting court evidence. She was raising questions. And questions are powerful. What made it even more intense was an old interview clip that resurfaced at the same time. Years ago, Nicki was asked who the most difficult person in the music industry was. She paused, hesitated. If I say it, it would be so real. Then she pleaded the fifth. That clip suddenly felt different. Fans started connecting dots. Was she hinting at Jay-Z back then? Were those two guys she once mentioned finally being exposed? Whether people agreed with her or not, one thing was clear. She wasn't afraid to reopen conversations most of the industry had quietly moved past. And just when it seemed like the accusations couldn't get more explosive, she turned her attention to Roc Nation's leadership. Just when people thought the situation couldn't escalate further, Nicki Minaj shifted her focus away from artists and aimed directly at executive power. Her next target was Desiree Perez, the CEO of Roc Nation and one of the most influential women in the business side of entertainment. Nicki didn't hold back. She brought up Perez's past legal history, something that had already been public record for years, but rarely discussed in mainstream music conversations. In the 1990s, Perez was arrested in connection to a federal case involving distribution of a controlled substance. Court records show she later cooperated with authorities, which helped reduce her sentence. Years later, she served time related to a parole violation. Then came the part that made everything more political. In January 2021, during his final hours in office, Donald Trump granted Desiree Perez a presidential pardon. The pardon wiped her federal conviction clean. Nicki pointed to that moment and questioned how it happened. She implied influence. She hinted at connections. She suggested that powerful alliances may have played a role. Nothing was proven, but speculation spread fast. And then things got even heavier. Nicki reposted interviews featuring Perez's estranged daughter, who had accused her mother of having her placed in a mental health facility under Florida's Baker Act. Those claims had already circulated online before, but Nicki amplifying them brought them back into the spotlight. Nicki began drawing parallels to her own experiences, including multiple swatting incidents at her home, where false emergency reports triggered police responses. She implied that powerful forces might use systems against people who speak. Now, the story wasn't just about money, it wasn't just about the Super Bowl, it was about control, power structures, legal influence, political favors. The internet split again. Some said Nicki was connecting dots that didn't belong together. Others believed she was exposing how deep executive power can run behind the scenes of music. But one thing couldn't be ignored. The deeper she went, the more dangerous the conversation became. And then she made claims that pushed the story into full conspiracy territory. Then the focus shifted from boardrooms to the internet itself. Nicki Minaj began suggesting that the system wasn't just against her in contracts or award shows, it was suppressing her online. She told fans that her posts were being hidden, that her engagement numbers weren't matching the size of her audience, that hashtags tied to her new music were getting buried in search results. The word she used? Shadow banned. For context, shadow banning refers to when a platform quietly limits a user's visibility without notifying them. Social media companies have denied doing this intentionally to specific creators, but the belief that algorithms can suppress content is common among influencers. Nicki claimed her features were being demolished, that collaborations weren't charting properly, that Billboard numbers were being manipulated. She even teased that a RICO-style investigation could eventually expose how the system works behind the scenes. That's a serious claim. A RICO case under U.S. law is used to target organized patterns of illegal activity. It's typically associated with large-scale corruption investigations. So when Nicki casually referenced something like that, people leaned in hard. Her fans, known as the Barbs, mobilized immediately. They started screenshotting posts, tracking engagement drops, documenting account suspensions. Some tweeted that whenever they defended her, their pages would glitch or lose reach. But critics pushed. On The Breakfast Club, hosts raised a fair question. If Roc Nation had enough power to suppress Nicki's content across major platforms, why wouldn't they first eliminate negative stories about themselves? It was a logical counterpoint. Still, timing fueled suspicion. Right when Nicki's accusations were trending worldwide, other massive headlines seemed to conveniently redirect attention. Was it coincidence? Was it strategy? Or was it just the internet doing what the internet does best? Amplifying. Nicki wasn't offering spreadsheets or legal filings. She was offering narrative, and narrative spreads faster than proof. But then, something happened overseas that made the distraction theory explode online, and fans immediately connected the dots. Just when the industry thought this was only about contracts and charts, politics entered the picture again. Nicki Minaj had recently been spotted at the White House with Donald Trump, smiling for photos and claiming she received what she called a gold card. That visit alone split the internet. Then, former CNN anchor Don Lemon publicly criticized her political stance. The two exchanged sharp words online, and within days, headlines exploded again. Around the same time, Elon Musk reposted one of Nicki's messages with American flag emojis. Now, the narrative wasn't just music industry drama, it looked like tech power, politics, and hip-hop colliding in real time. But while Nicki's accusations were trending, something interesting happened overseas. Jay-Z made a surprise appearance in Paris during Beyoncé's tour stop. It was their first time performing together in 7 years. The crowd went wild, fans celebrated. But online, people questioned the timing. Was it just a special moment or a strategic distraction while Nicki's claims were catching fire? Then came the phrase that changed everything: pink files. Nicki started posting cryptic numbers, dates, and warnings like, "The audit begins soon." She dropped a voice note claiming, "They've been cooking the books for years." The hashtag Pink Files began trending worldwide. Some fans believed she was preparing to expose financial documents. Others thought a documentary was coming. Rumors even circulated that emergency legal meetings were happening behind closed doors. No proof surfaced yet. No lawsuits. But the tension? It was rising fast, and everyone knew something bigger. Then she went live. No stage, no glam, just Nicki Minaj and a camera. Her tone was calm. "They tried to bury me," she said, "but forgot I'm the..." She made it clear she wouldn't release another album until her contract was renegotiated. She claimed her documentary had been stalled. She repeated that Billboard numbers were manipulated. And she told fans to save everything, screenshots, posts, suspensions, because this wasn't drama. It was documentation. Meanwhile, the people she accused stayed silent. Jay-Z didn't respond, Beyonce said nothing. Roc Nation filed no lawsuits, no press conference, no public denial. That silence divided the public even more. Some saw it as strategy. Don't feed the fire. Others saw it as fear. Don't open doors that can't be closed. Media outlets kept covering the story, but carefully. Podcasts debated whether it was personal resentment or real industry exposure. One thing became undeniable. Without dropping a single song, Nicki had become the most talked about artist in the world again. Love her or question her, she forced the conversation. And now the industry has to decide, ignore her